It gives me great pleasure to introduce Sandy in a minute, but welcome to our intellectual salon for early November. Happy November the 1st, the 1st of November, and perhaps one of the Dia de los Muertos days, right? So, I am Joe Medeiros, and I'm with Sierra College Press. These salons are put together by the library, the Friends of the Library, Sierra College Press and associated students. We're very happy to put them on. We've done a number of different topics, and we do these once a month through the whole year. We spent a year doing the concept of time. The next year we did the concept of love, and we look at all of these things in various ways and perspectives and so on. We have a lot of fun with these, and some of them are really thoughtful and very insightful. Last year we did fear and looking at all the different multiple aspects of fear. And this past spring we did home, and now we're continuing with the home this fall. This is our second to the last presentation for the semester. We hope that you'll join us on the next ones too. We don't know what our next topic is going to be, but we're looking for another four-letter word. You notice we kind of stuck with 4 letters there. So if you have an idea, let me know. As you can see, we have done a variety of different topics related to the home theme, and it's such an important part of our lives. Is it a physical thing? Is it a spiritual thing? Is it emotional? Does it have parameters, boundaries, or whatever? And it's been a real delight to kind of explore this at this salon, and with students and faculty and friends. Today we will do this one, returning home on Dia de los Muertos, and then next, at the end of the month, just before the semester's end, we'll be doing 3 days in a row right here, and we'll just be showing a portion of a very, very important Ai Weiwei film. He's a Chinese filmmaker and artist. He did this one on human flow. We're going to focus on the very, very important topic of the refugee crisis in the world. People being forced from their homes for any number of different purposes. And today, of course, we're going to have Professor Sandy Escobar do coming home or returning home at Dia de los Muertos. So it's a great pleasure to have my friend and colleague here. She actually looks like one of my sisters or one of my daughters or whatever. I feel very, very proud to be able to introduce her to you. She's a newer faculty member here, chairman of the art department, or a co-chair, but she chairs the art side, and then there's an art history side as well. She comes to us from Southern California, where she got her bachelor's and master's degree at California State University, Northridge. Then she went up to Chico and got a master's in fine arts as well. She's a three-dimensional artist that does magnificent things. Is your show still up in Sacramento?
Do I have a show? No.
Oh, I thought you did.
No, it's
okay.
done.
But at the end of the presentation, we want to announce to you that there's a couple of different Dia de los Muertos events that are happening in the Sacramento area that after you hear this presentation today, you'll certainly want to continue on and learn a little bit more about it. So Sandy is a tremendous artist, does things in 3 dimensions, a sculptor and a what do you call it an installation artist, right? I love all of her stuff, and but I don't want to take any more of her time. I'd like you all to welcome Professor Sandy Escobar, and with the topic of returning home on Dia de los Muertos.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming out. This is so wonderful and lovely. Today, November 1st, is Dia de los Muertos. It is the first day. It's celebrated today and tomorrow. Today, for the most part, and I'll explain right now kind of the way that it's changed, but today is a day given to adults, and tomorrow's for children. But thank you so much, Joe, for inviting me. I'm really happy to be able to be part of the series and to share this perspective. I was going to say a couple things. Bear with me, I did write some things down. I don't want to read too much, but there was a couple of things I wanted to make sure to kind of keep myself in track because I'm really tangential. Again, returning home on Dia de los Muertos, my pronouns are she, her, and hers. Our department chair, teach sculpture. I'm also one of the co-advisors for the Dream Club here on campus for our undocumented students. There we go. Yeah. So when Joe asked me if I would do a presentation on home, returning home for Dia de los Muertos, I was like, oh, I had to sit with that for a little bit and really think about what does this mean? Home in terms of like how I fit into this, how it was celebrated in my home, ideas of returning home on Dia de los Muertos, culturally, traditionally, historically, spiritually, in a contemporary sense, and personally. So I kind of had to sit with all those things. And so the best way, so I'm going to do my best to try to relay what this idea means to me. This is one person that you're hearing from. I don't speak for all, obviously. So, home, these two folks I would like to introduce. These beautiful people are Carmen Saldívar Lozano, Francisco Escobar Velasco, and these are my parents. I can't even begin anything that I do ever without having them in my mind, right? So these are my parents. By the way, they just celebrated 50 years together, October 19th, right? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, 50 years, and they still like each other and everything. So my parents immigrated to the U.S. from Mexico, from Aguascalientes, Mexico. My mom is actually from Zacatecas, which is not Aguascalientes, but it's the neighboring state. Zacatecas? Oh yeah. Oh, Aguas. So they met in Aguascalientes. They lived in Aguascalientes, got married. And then they came. My father came before 68. He came, went back and forth. They got married in 68. And then finally, my dad was able to bring my mom and my big brother, who was born in Mexico, and they moved to Los Angeles. That was their first spot. From Los Angeles, they went to Northern California. They lived in Daly City, Sacramento. They lived in Sacramento and Carmichael. They lived in Hayward, which is where I was born, and then back to Los Angeles, which is where my little brother was born. And so this is all, kind of our path. And my dad was working construction, gardening is what he does then and what he's still doing now in his mid-70s. Ooh, my little. This is my family. This photo is 11 years old. But this is my family. I wanted to use this photo because my grandmother was still part of our family. I was lucky enough that I was able to grow up with her. It was my maternal grandmother. And so I got to grow up in a household where she was part of our home, right? She was like my other mom. And so when my parents came here in the 70s, it was very much, I'll say, encouraged to assimilate. Our families had to assimilate, right? My dad, they came here for a better life. They came here to give us opportunity, right? They were taught to work hard. You work hard, you listen more, speak less. You don't try to stand out, you fit in and do as Americans do, right? So this included like some of the construction worker wives that my dad worked with taught my mom about Thanksgiving, like canned cranberry, boxed mashed potatoes and all, right? And like I grew up with that. We did Halloween with the little plastic mask and the little plastic thing, if you guys remember from the 80s, right? You just buy the thing. And that's what we grew up with, and that's what we did. And obviously it's through their lens. So it's still, some of the traditions are still there, right? Thanksgiving still had like bowls of chile all over the place, but still, it's still pretty Americanized. And we grew up pretty assimilated. Although, except for the language. My mom refused to learn English because she didn't want us to lose our language. So my first language is Spanish. My home language is still predominantly Spanish, except for my siblings, we Spanglish. We Spanglish at each other. But, again, we did el triqui-tri and all that good stuff. But I didn't know until high school about these other things, these other traditions, these other customs, part of our culture that were, I'm going to say the word hidden inside of my parents because we don't know. We didn't know how to expose those things. They didn't put them out to us, right? Or things that they left behind in Mexico. So it was probably in my Spanish class with Señor de Santiago that I heard Dia de los Muertos, and we learned about this. So I was just like, what is this? What is this thing? What's it about? So I started asking questions. I went home and asked my mom and my grandma, did you do Dia de los Muertos? What is this? And they're like, oh yeah, we go. Well, they grew up, the like colony, la colonia, where they grew up, or their neighborhood in Mexico. They lived really close to the cemetery. My grandfather's buried there. And they started to tell me, oh yeah, we would go and we'd clean it, you scrub it, you sweep. Everybody, and that's the wonderful part of it, is that everybody in the town would go and clean their loved ones' graves, and they'd decorate and they'd make food. And so I'm in high school, like later in high school, and I'm just like, this is something about me that I'm just learning. And one thing I'll kind of bring up a little more, but it's probably high school, early college, when I learned the word Chicana and what that meant. And, you know, I grew up in the heart of LA, mid-city, so all the kids looked like me, spoke like me, so I never questioned anything, right? So my school was predominantly Latino kids, my high school was Latino and Black, and there was very few, you know, other folks than those groups. There were some, but they were the minority. So we never questioned any of this. We didn't know any of this. We were who we were. Until I got to college, and then that number flipped, and then I was like, whoa, who am I and how do I fit into this, right? And so just learning that idea of like, oh, I'm a Chicana, like my parents are from Mexico, but I was born here. You know, what is this, right? Here, I don't quite fit, or people, you know, especially now going to college or moving out of Los Angeles, for sure, people are like, what are you? What are you? What are you? Why do you talk like that? What are you? Where are you from? LA? Where were you born? Hayward? Like, but where are you from? And I'm like, LA. Like, I don't, you know, and then they don't know how to ask, like, what's your ethnic background, right? So, and then, but if I go to Mexico, and here I would say Mexican, but when I go to Mexico, my cousins will correct me quick if I say Mexican, right? I'm not Mexican in Mexico. They're like, nah, you're American. But my mom calls white people American. She doesn't call us American. She says, oh, Americanos. And I'm like, Mom, we're Americans too. So, you know, just a little bit of that little hint of that background of how it is that we grew up, right? So what is Dia de los Muertos? Dia de los Muertos is a celebration to honor our dead, rooted in pre-Columbian tradition. So this is before, you know, before Columbus, before any of that, pre-Hispanic times, as they would call it. The 2-day celebration now, Dia de los Muertos, to honor and remember our loved ones who have passed. So it's people that you, like in your family, your loved ones, but you can have an altar for people you've never met, famous people, people who've passed, right? Anybody that you honor, that you wish to honor. It is not the Mexican Halloween, right? That's a big kind of misconception. I know I just passed out candy, but it's candy. So it's not Mexican Halloween. Those two things, actually, Halloween is, you just want to scare off those spirits, right? For dead, we're welcoming, come over, you know, we're not scaring them off, we're welcoming them. And it is central to Mexico. It has ancient origins though. Professor Ralph de Unamuno gave me some information. I appreciate him sharing some of this stuff. We had a conversation about it. And he shared a little bit more, and I was able to research a little bit more, right? Other than just like Wikipedia, because my grandma's gone. So pre-Columbian Mexico, the Aztec people, or the Mexica, they would celebrate what was called Micalhuitli, right? So that's a Nahuatl word, it's Aztec. Micalhuitli. It is a tradition of honoring of the passing of life from the physical realm to essence, right? To a spirit realm. And it was actually a month-long festival during the Aztec harvest month, which is September, the Xocolhuetzi, from September 8th to the 27th. I don't know what their calendar was like back then. I don't know that they said, but it was about that September month harvest. The trees would be decorated with amatl paper, skulls made from a mixture of the amaranth grain and honey from the maguey. And then it was during the colonial era, so Spain, when Spain colonized Mexico and the Catholic Church came in, that's when the celebrations were moved to November 1st and 2nd, because they were able to link them to All Saints Day and All Souls Day, right? Because that's what today and tomorrow are, right? All Saints Day, All Souls Day. So, but it came from this other tradition. It actually is it's rooted in this other tradition, right? So during these times, again, kind of like I mentioned with my family, people go to the panteon, they go to the graveyards, they go to their graves, they clean them, right? You're going to honor your dead, you want to clean them, you want to give them a nice, clean home, right? That's where their physical bodies are. So you clean it, you decorate, and the wonderful part for me, and a thing that I very lucky to be a part of, is that I'm very much part of community, whether it's family or any which. I'm a community seeker, right? I'll meet people and then they become my community and I kind of grab onto them. And I love that because that's how I grew up. And we do things in community. We're not alone. That makes me always feel good. And even if I am alone, I'm not alone because I have my folks who have passed on that I have behind me. So you can see folks going, celebrating. You see, I'll be talking a little bit more about the things that you see on the altars and the things that they place on the altars. So ofrendas. An ofrenda, so essentially the word altar, as you recognize if you know, like from Catholic or perhaps Christian church, the altar is the front of the church. And so we end up calling these altar, but really what they are, they're ofrendas. And what that is an offering. So these are our ofrendas. The ofrendas, they're very personal, even though they have very similar things, and I'll tell you right now all of the objects that we put on them. But they're very personal. So like for example, right here, I love that you can see, maybe I'd see like a crucifix next to, the photo of our loved one, next to those Fritos and jarritos and a beer, right? So they're very, very similar things, but very personal, and you're gonna be really connecting to your loved ones and pulling those objects. So what goes on a ofrenda? And we connect to the four directions, the elements. So fire, water, air, and earth. So for fire, you see we have candles. We light the candles. The glass of water. I shouldn't drink from that one, but I wish I could. Glass of water. Incense or copal or sage we light, and that represents the air, and you can kind of see the air, the smoke come up. And then for the flowers, all kinds of flowers, but one flower that in particular is cempasúchil. So that's the marigolds, right? So these are Mexican marigolds. They're actually from Mexico area. So that's what we would have there. So the cempasúchil flower. This is a altar of mine from home. One of my home altars. So other objects and offerings that you would put on the ofrenda would be food, right? I have Mexican sweetbread, pan dulce, on mine. And I also, I have tamales, mole, pan de muerto, which is bread of the dead. So that would be like, there's two different styles, and it's this one. They come in really big ones too, but I got a little one, so there's this one. And then this one is also pan de muerto, and it's like in the shape of a little person, right? So these are special. Bakeries do them only right now. So you can go this week and get pan de muerto at a bakery. Calaveras or calacas, so skull, skeleton. You can see I have a sugar skull. Bless your heart. Juan Blanco. Thank you so much. Who knew? Talking makes you thirsty. Photos of our loved ones or anyone that you're remembering and honoring. Again, it doesn't have to be somebody you knew. Decorations, you want to make it festive, right? This is not a time, and not that there aren't tears, and even last night as I was doing this, I'm like, oh, I better not cry. And obviously there's going to be sadness. You pull out those pictures, and you think of all those times, it's sad, but it's not meant to be sad. It's meant to be a celebration. It's happy. We want to make sure that those people know, hey, look, I got your back, you got my back, I'm thinking of you. It's wonderful. So it's a happy time. Cempasúchil. I found this and I thought it would be really sweet. Let me see if I can play this. I don't know if it'll mess me up. It's in Spanish. Oh, is there a way to get? But how would I get out of the presentation? Maybe like real quick, end show? Yeah. Okay. So I and then click on that. And I'll translate it, and so I won't put the volume up too high. I just found this, and it made me kind of giddy. I was like, oh, this is so great. So I just want to share real quick. It's 1 minute. So I'll start with the first one because she speaks really quickly. So in the beginning, there was the goddesses or the gods. They would the gods are who would dominate the valley of Anahuac, right? And this is in central Mexico. So rain would make the valleys nice and green. And so every afternoon, these two, Xochitl and Huitzilin, would go up and honor Tonatiuh, the sun god. They grew up together, they fell in love, and then war started. And Tonatiuh had to go off and fight in this war. He passed away in war, and Xochitl was very sad and went and prayed to Tonatiuh that he would reunite them. And so he shined so bright on her that he turned her into a marigold. And when he was shining on this marigold, Huitzilin would come, or Huitzilin, I said Tonatiuh, he came as a hummingbird and fed the center of the flower, and now they kind of live together, right? And so now the Cempasúchil is the flower of the dead, because of this tradition. Like that I'm like, oh, that is such a beautiful story. So I'm like, it's like a minute. I have to share it. It made me happy. So, there we go. Oh, my bad. It's doing the whole playlist. Here. I could listen to them all day. All right. Slideshow. Play from current slide. Look at me. Technology. Oh, I didn't technology that good. Okay. Cempasúchil. So there's that. Maize, corn. We're people of the corn. We're people of the earth, right? So that's a very common, corn is a staple, and we use it very much. So some of the typical imagery that you would see. These are images from the Panteón de Sacramento. This was this last weekend, Saturday, Sunday. It was put on by the Latino Center for Art and Culture. And people are invited to go and kind of clean up a plot or a little area and set up their altars. And again, just kind of walking around, you get to see, our commonalities, the things that people use commonly, but how individual, how personalized, and how beautiful these are for our loved ones. I mean, you can look at these, and first of all, nobody's going to be doing one for somebody that they're like, oh yeah, they were cool. It's people that you love those people, you want to honor them, you want to do the best thing ever, and that's what you see these days, right? And people are there. This one's kind of funny, mi casa es su casa, right? Giants, right? The records, music, this is a music lover. Over here, I love seeing all of these things, and I love seeing these objects that come from our traditions that I saw my grandma had, and objects that are very contemporary, right? And you see people still working on them there. I'm working with the flower, the cempasúchil. You could smell, you're walking, you could smell the incense, you could smell the sage, you could smell the copal. The cempasúchil are really, have a really strong scent. The candles, there's sounds. It's a whole full sensory experience. It's really wonderful, an event like this. Morning time, they start early and they go till the nighttime. There's dancers, and anytime you go, you're going to be experiencing something, right? You're going to be seeing, like I said, the beer next to the, here's just an Arizona tea, I'm just like, that's so bizarre, and I love it, right? So, oftentimes, and hopefully the photos on there are all of older folks, but sometimes you get younger people too. We all, death takes everybody. And then something like this would be, so these are personal individual altars, but there's also communal altars that some people do. I'm going to, right here at the Cross Cultural Center, I just saw Sergio, Puente made an altar, and it's right at the entrance. It's right next to the bookstore. The Cross Cultural Center is right next to the bookstore. And it's right as you walk in, there's this beautiful altar that Puente set up. And they invited some of our students to bring photos and different items, right? And so something like this was from last year's event at the Old Sacramento from Soul Collective. And so they didn't have so many individual altars. They did have some, but they had many that were communal, where they invited people to come and bring something. It could be a little note that you write to someone. If you don't have a photo or don't want to leave it, you could just leave a little note, a little something, right? Another one of the images that we find on these are calaveras, so skulls, commonly the sugar skull, kind of like the way that I have my face painted. So the sugar skull. The sugar skulls, I learned that they came from that, even the ancient tradition, right, where they're using the honey from the nectar of the cactus of the savila. So, but these skulls, you know, these other ones were sugar skulls. These are big paper mache skulls. But the image of the skull, and the common one that we see is La Catrina. And so at this last weekend at the Sacramento, the Latino Center Panteon, she was walking around. La Catrina was walking around. You could take your pictures with her. It's a beautiful image, La Catrina. So where does La Catrina come from? She comes from the images of this artist, Jose Guadalupe Posada, who is from, check this out, Aguascalientes. Yeah, he's from Aguascalientes. So he is from where my parents are from. So that's another way that I got to go home with this. I'm like, yeah, connecting back to my home. Aguas, Jose Guadalupe Posada, these images that we know. This was his studio, it was his print shop, and it is now the museum, the first museum in Aguascalientes. And what they have there, or actually I should introduce him a little more, is that he was a political artist, right? So he was born 1852, passed away 1913. He was a political printmaker and engraver. He did satirical kind of images like cartoons, social commentary, political commentary. He criticized religion, the upper class. This was during the Porfiriato, so there was a time that Porfirio Diaz was the president or dictator of Mexico. So he made a lot. So the Catrina actually came from this higher echelon culture of these upper class folks, and he made them into these skeletons, right? It has now been adapted and she's loved, right? Everybody has this image of La Catrina. But a lot of the work he did became published, he became known, he became highly criticized. He had to leave Aguascalientes because the government was not into his work. They did not appreciate art and what he was saying, his commentary. But a lot of these images come from him. And now you see them. There's a tequila bottle out there. I don't remember. They have his images. They have I think it's this. It's a good tequila. So, and some of these, he's not just criticizing, he's also showing part of our tradition, and you see people cooking, dancing, playing music, having a good old time. And the museo, my parents went to it. I haven't been back to Aguas in a while, but the museo, they do workshops. They work with the community. It's really wonderful how they reach out. They do classes, conferences, they hold conferences there. They do all this to kind of re-engage their community in it. And they really do. Like my family who lives there, they love that place. They've been there. I don't know that they've taken any of the classes, but they've been there, which is, for them to go to a museum, it's pretty awesome. Another image that we can see and that we use for this, or you'd see at a celebration, are mojigangas. Mojigangas are these big, beautiful pieces. I fell in love with those since I was a little kid. You see this big, so little kid. So you're like, well, you didn't know about Day of the Dead. No, I didn't. But in Mexico, when we would go out there, they would still use these. And so you would see them. And you would see them either in place, or if there was a celebration. There's this big festival for like El Jardín de San Marcos, like the park from where we're from. They would have these big events, these big parties. And so I saw some of those there. I didn't know what it was. It was just these big sculptures. So the mojigangas, they're big giant puppets. They are sculptures. The head and the bust is made of paper mache, and they're on these big wooden frames. And this is from Aguas. This is a photo, and I have a lot of photos by Andres Alvarez. He's an artist who showed here at the Ridley Gallery, and he's a photographer in town, and he's an artist. He's getting his degree right now. So he photographed these beautiful pieces, some of these mojigangas. So the blessing. A blessing is still part of it. I always tell people like, well, I'm not religious. Don't think it doesn't have to be religious. But you don't have to be religious to be spiritual. And you don't have to, be all these other things to still connect with our culture. I can't pull away from it. It's part of my existence. So I love this. Trudy Robles, who's one of the board members at Soul Collective, came to one of my classes that I teach here, a Rice class, and she explained to our students, and she talked on the medicine wheel. and she connected to the medicine wheel and the again, the 4 directions, the elements, how it is used. You could see that they've used the medicine wheel here on the ground. I don't recall what the name of that of this circle is right now. If anybody knows it, let me know. And you enter and you have to walk in clockwise. You only come in a certain direction. You walk out in a certain direction. And you could see there's a Aztec dancer and they're doing a blessing. So they're starting our ceremony with a blessing. Aztec dancers, since I was a kid also, whenever we go see them anywhere, I got highly emotional. It would make me cry. Even as a mom, I'd be like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, I don't know. And now that I'm older and I'm kind of connecting, I'm like, man, that is genetic memory. I look at them, I hear the drum, I can hear their drum, and I vibrate. I love seeing them. I love it. I always wanted, a lot of the times it's families who do it together, but I always loved watching. I loved, they blow in the conch, they're calling out, face the directions. So even as a child, I'm like, I don't know what they're doing, but they're doing something, and I like those things. And now as an adult, I'm like, oh, they're bringing us back. They're bringing us back. They're connecting us to the roots, to what this all meant, right? Regional dances, celebration, right? You can't have a party, you can't celebrate without dancing. So at events like the one that was on this last Saturday, or possibly this next Saturday, and I don't know about the Friday one, but often you'll see dances, and the dances are regional dances. You'll have like Northern Mexico, Southern Mexico, Central, and they're for all sorts of things, right? So here you can see this one's wearing horns, single person. Here you can see our youth participating in this. A lot of these dancers, ballet folklorico, right? And you can see they're regional. They all have different connections, different meanings of things. And it's them bringing, this is what I offer to your celebration. This is what I'm offering, right? And so some of them are for harvest celebrations. You're trying to encourage and to be thankful for the harvest, or for the harvest that's to come, that it's fruitful. Some of them are for coming of age, right? There's some where you see somebody who starts off as this really old person. I don't have images of that, but he starts off as this really old person, and then he loses his cane, and then he starts dancing, and then he's like young, right? And so that's different connections to our life, to growing up, to being old, to being young, to kind of like the earth and the seasons. Some of them reference seasons, romance, love, right? There's a marriage one. There's one where the couple's dancing together. They're surrounded, and they make a bow with their feet, and then they lift. You don't know what they're doing. They just have a ribbon on the floor, and they're doing something, and the dance is entirely them dancing around, and then they lift with their feet, and it's a bow. And that's like a wedding. It's like a marriage. They're together. It's a union. So it's beautiful, like this is your culture, and you're watching this, you're like, yeah, I love this, and I love being able to see and walk around and see these little girls, little boys, little kids, just kind of being part of this. And even if they don't fully understand, they will, and they get, raised in this. And I think it's awesome. It's healthy. It's, it's medicine, I think, and so you could just see the different clothes. These are not costumes. You don't go up to them and say, I love your costume. It's not a costume, right? That's the traditional wear of a certain thing, of a certain region, of a certain tradition. So this is like Veracruz. The dancing is different too. Their styles of dancing is different. This is like they'd use a lot of harp music. The steps are smaller, and so they're so unique. They're so beautiful. You can't look at this and go, Mexican people, and then throw a generalization in there, because you can't. You cannot generalize. These are so different from each other and just so wonderful and so ancient and traditional, but it's so contemporary too. So Coco, when was it, like a year ago, 2 years ago? The movie Coco came out, right? I know. I'm not a big Disney person. I'm not a big Disney fan. Don't touch Jason Sumi. But when Coco came out, I was like, huh? Coco? What is this? Who's doing this? Who's in charge of this? Who wrote for it? Right? I want to investigate a little bit, right? So I'm just kind of like, what are your intentions? They took a long time to make this movie. I learned that Disney was trying to call this movie Day of the Dead, which means they would have had a trademark on the name Day of the Dead, which means anything Day of the Dead would belong to Disney. Like, you don't do that, right? That is like, nobody would have gone and seen this. That would have been terrible. It was a tragedy, So they called it Coco, luckily, and they had writers. They actually did a lot of research, and a lot of the writers that they had, were legit, and they actually were like connected to culture and were able to really help with the making of the film, so it wouldn't feel, so it wouldn't be not authentic. I don't know what the right word would be there. Yeah, so it wouldn't be completely appropriated, absolutely, So I watched this from the moment that the freaking Disney Castle came on and they played mariachi. Right. Steady stream. I had a steady stream of tears. My little brother is a classical guitarist. I was sitting just behind him, and I cried harder because I could tell that he was crying. And I watched this in LA. It was in Spanish in a theater full of brown people. So there was like people answering the phones and stuff, but it's cool. But it was so beautiful. It was so beautiful, and I was really appreciating this movie. I'm watching it. The fact, like, I grew up with my grandma. We honor our ancestors. We honor our elders. We honor them. We don't shove them into homes. We don't ignore them. We don't stick them in a corner. We love them. We love them. We take care of them. We go and say hi to them first. They're a blessing. I was able to grow up with my grandmother. I feel so fortunate that I had that experience. And to see this little boy have that connection and to see children seeing that, I'm like, wow, that's important. That's impactful. That's powerful stuff. The one part of the movie that kind of gave me a little like, I don't know, and I, at first I'm like, okay, this idea that if nobody remembers you, you're forgotten, you're gone. But the fact that it was kind of shown as a border crossing, I'm one of the advisors here on campus for our undocumented students. I'm watching this going, now our undocumented students can't even be reminded. They have to be reminded even in this movie that there's a border crossing, that they're not allowed over if these whatever things. All right, so I'm sitting there like, I didn't like that. And, I went after, of course, I'm online looking at all the criticisms, and with everything, there's people on the far right, people on the far left. That movie, burn it down. And then, that movie's just everything in the world. No, it's neither one of those, I don't think. I think there's conversations to be had, because I think it was an important movie. I think that representation matters, and for people to be able to see themselves in Disney and something like this, like little kids to be able to be like, dude, that's my name, or I look like that kid, or look, my mom and dad, Mama Imelda, like the grandma, the chancla references. It's funny, like to hear your language spoken. It's funny. It's awesome. So, again, I think for the most part it was a good thing. But with this comes, of course, Coco merchandise, right? And I kept thinking, imagine all this stuff in the Disney store, and like it's on the floor and it's in boxes, or now people are gonna, and again, people are like, well, are we not supposed to support it? Wait, what do you want then? Do you want us to support it, or do you not want us to support it? I'm like, no, of course I want you to support. But when I look at stuff like this, I'm like, I hope that people connect and understand and know what that connection is, and watch the movie and actually paid attention and saw like what that stuff is. So when you're doing the things or dressing up, again, like I was like, there's kids for Halloween dressed up as characters from this. So I'm like, well, you're not supposed to dress up as Dia de los Muertos for Halloween, but if you're dressed as a character, that's cool. But then, right? So it's a conversation to be had. It's a conversation to be had. There's not a set, these are the things, right? And I'm not I'm not the person. I'm not the one in charge. They didn't put me in charge at the meeting. But cultural appropriation, right? That's the ugly side of all this. Day of the Dead costumes. All I had to type that in Google, and I got page after page after page after page of all these really cute costumes that you could wear. Sexy skeleton, sexy Katrina, right? I went, and this is from my own paper, grocery store, like the traditional food of chicken wings of Mexicans. You can go get some Stella Rosa black with the skulls on it, and then buy your religious candles. Which again, people are going to be confused. Oh, it's a religious thing. Well, no, not necessarily. I can go buy my Dia de los Muertos scratchers and hope I win something, right? And so there's that part of it. And hopefully when you're out there and you see that, hopefully you could share like, we have to be mindful of that stuff. That's where it doesn't, it doesn't feel good. It's not like that's not honorable to me. I don't look at that and go, right on, Food Max is offering chicken wings for Dia de los Muertos. It didn't do anything for me, right? So now what comes from that? Indigenous resistance. Resistance, people don't want that. People want to be able to tell their own stories. I want to tell my story. I want to let you tell your story. And we want to be able to see what is empowering. What's the part of this, right? We're a culture, not a costume, also with that, along these lines, you can't enjoy part of us and not other parts of us, right? You can't be all about Taco Tuesday, but then be all about like, oh, I don't know, border politics. I don't know, that's politics. I don't worry about that. But hey, like your costumes are really cute though. I'm gonna buy these Day of the Dead stockings because they're hella cute. Nah, right? So we're full-fleshed humans, and we like to be taken in as such, right? So ideas like this, like people being called illegal, people being called aliens, that shouldn't be a thing, right? Something that when everybody hears somebody being called illegal, it should kind of hurt inside of you, right? No human being is illegal. And all of this is part of it. You know, I know that this is veering from Day of the Dead, but not really, because it's still connected to our ties, our cultural ties. And how can you go and celebrate and do all these wonderful things when right here in Woodland, we have kids still in the detention centers. There's people coming to the borders and there's troops being sent to stop those people at the borders. And that is part of our history too. And that is part of our contemporary story too, right? It's not just the cute, you know, I'm gonna go to Mongo's on Tuesday night and dance, you know, and there's a mariachi and I love the tacos and I love you're so spicy. Yeah, but people call me that. Oh, I love you're so spicy. I'm like, please don't call us spicy. Latinas are not spicy, right? So it's all part of it, right? And so who we are. When you have a leader of the country talking about trying to revoke the 14th Amendment, the birthrights, right? How can those two things exist in one? It cannot. And you cannot ignore this part of it when you're trying to celebrate this other part of it, right? You cannot. Those things do not live in separate worlds. They are all in the same. So how do we resist? On Saturday when I went to the Dia de los Muertos event, they had this. This is what a voter looks like, and they had a mirror right there. So now they're telling people, vote. Get out there and vote. Get your word out, right? Your voice matters. Not all of us can vote. It's a privilege. Not all of us can vote. Not all of us can go out there and put that information out there. How else do I do this? Go and connect to the community. Don't just go to Party City and get the stuff and the cute things and the Dia de los Muertos stuff because it looks cute. Go celebrate the things that we're putting on. So this is the one from this last Saturday, Panteón de Sacramento. It was from 11 to 10 on Saturday, and you know, this is a show at Soul Collective. One of the receptions already happened, but the next reception is going to be November 10, 11, 12, 10 is a Saturday. There's going to be, what is it? There's somewhere on here. I can give you the information, but look it up. It's online too. It's at Soul Collective in Sacramento. And this honors, it's called Cantos del Pueblo, honoring Raza music. But there's a lot of altars built to music, right? To have our kids connect to our music, to the music that our parents learned about and the contemporary music that we listen to. You know, it's a really beautiful thing. I'll have some images from this one. And then the upcoming ones. This Friday in Broadway and 36 at the Brick House Gallery, there's going to be a Dia de Muertos. It's free in Oak Park. It's a beautiful experience. I recommend you come out Friday. On Saturday, Souls of the City in Old Sacramento. I can't see the hours, but I have the flyer. Joe had it. And then this one I just learned about. I was able to stick it in my presentation last minute. It's in Lincoln. So those of you who are like, oh, Sacramento's so far, you must never have been to LA if you think Sacramento's far. But this was in Lincoln, November 2nd, 5 to 8:30. I know one of the women who is going to be selling her wares that she makes these beautiful little mini altars. Go support. Right? That's how we can get our word out. That's how we can support our communities. Support. Soul Collective, just some of the images. They're on 21st. So I went to that show. Again, I'm at this art show. They opened the art show with a blessing. Again, bringing our culture back. This is to people who are aware of this and like, oh yes, the danzantes are here. They didn't even dance. It was just a grandmother and her granddaughter, and they just did a blessing, offered a blessing for the show. They had to stand in a circle. Everybody was able to speak a word, say a couple things, whatever they wanted to share. That's beautiful, right? Community, and we're encouraging people to kind of contribute to that conversation. They're honoring, so these are artists, Ruby Chacon and Abel Rodriguez are honoring Juan Gabriel. He's like the Mexican prince, not a Mexican prince, but like the prince. So he's kind of seen that way. Or Chavela Vargas, she's not passed away yet, she's still alive, but he passed away. There's an altar in there done by a couple, Dami Yaya Porras. Ruben Reveles did a tiny altar for... Oh, thank you.
It's a virus.
So he did that's a musician that's like one of the ones from my parents, right? From Zacatecas, from where my mom is from. And again, kind of like, whoa, see, I didn't even need my notes. So coming home for Dia de los Muertos, what does it mean to me? I don't know. It means this. It means that our youth gets to grow up with our culture. It means that I get to have these experiences that my maybe great-grandmother saw that I never saw, right? And I mean that I never saw hers, and she's not getting my version of it. I get to see families. I get to see people sharing together in community, talking, honoring their dead. And when we give representation, when we let children see that they are important, that our culture is important, that their lives are important, I mean, they're our future, right? There's like possibilities are endless as to what they can do. You just have to give somebody the opportunity, give somebody the space, allow them to know this. I also love the contemporary part of it. I love this other, how we've kind of, again, the Chicanismo part of it and how we take it. Seeing the Katrina walk down K Street or wherever this was. Me Too has this little wallpaper thing you could put on your phone. Tattoos, right? Different kind of tattoos. All that stuff. I would have thrown some bands in here, like, music that's contemporary, but it's still tied, to our cultures. So at this part, I'm going to wrap it up, but if you will allow me, I want to wrap it up by honoring some women that have been in my life who's passed, and that are important, that I feel stand behind me, support me, have my back. When I pray to these women, right? My family, and then the rest of them, they just kind of, it's a support system, right? I get to walk tall because I have this wonderful support system. I call her my mama tita. I never met her. That's my dad's grandma, right? That's my dad's grandma. She went to his wedding, to my parents' wedding. These are my goddesses. This is my mamamita. She's the one I grew up with. That's my mama Tola, my dad's mom. And then Tia Teresa, mi tia Nati, mi tia Juanita, Chuya, mi tia Pachita. Look at her on a motorcycle. My cousin Susie passed away at 30 years old. And women that have also impacted my life, Leti Herrera from my neighborhood, Janice Porter, Jen Tancredo, and Becky Emmons. I went to grad school with them, and they've all passed. Katie Bork, she was one of our faculty here on campus. She's awesome. She's a musician. So they have all passed. People from Sierra College that have recently passed since I've been here that I've met, Jim Albertson, Tim Haney, Katie Borks, and Christine Sabine have recently passed. These are our Sierra College family that we can honor, right? And so I would welcome you just right now. I went to a bar mitzvah, and they did this really wonderful thing, and if you will allow me, and I think if it's okay if I can do it, I wanted to give you all a chance to just say out the name of somebody that you might be honoring on Dia de los Muertos, and I'll just kind of go around the room, and then if you want to say somebody's name when I kind of point your direction, just say it out.
Lisa.
My brother Dan. My mother-in-law Gavin.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Thank you. That was really sweet. And yeah, that's it. Gracias. Thank you so much.
We have a few minutes to ask, what's the connection here with home? Obviously, home is much bigger than just a physical place, right? And this is specifically why I asked Sandy to come in and talk about this. If you have questions of her, anyone? Yeah, here we go.
I'm also Chicana too. I was wondering if you I know this is your part of your culture and you're also American too, but how is this connected to your home, other than it's your culture from your parents' side?
To be Chicana or?
To be Chicana and then not really having those traditions because you've lived here for so long.
Yeah. Well, I've gained them now. Like I've taken them on. To be Chicana for me, like in a nutshell, is like you're not from here, you're not from there. Is the first, right? There's like I think there's so many different steps of like what Chicana is and when you're discovering it, right? First we're like, oh, and then you learn about the history and then you get angry. And then you're like, wait, but even our own culture will, you know, talk smack to us, and we get there's a lot of taboos, or there's a lot of things that come from our own culture that doesn't allow us to do, you know, certain things. So we get it from both sides, right? You're not, the question of authenticity. But I think the way that I can call that home is that now, I'm 38, I feel like I can really own where I stand with it, and it feels good. Like I'm in it and it feels good, and I'm from both spots. I'm not Mexican, I wasn't born there, I was born here, but people still question me. But so what, you know? And like as soon as you find that little spot that you belong in, I think that's what feels home to me. Because I know what not to talk about in my home. I know what's taboo. I know what we avoid, you know? And so that's okay. I'm not gonna fight. Yeah, I'd rather not. But yes.
And the celebration of death, is it usually also something that some relatives, you know, who are present here believe that they can communicate with their ancestors? I mean, is that still part of it? Because in the 15th, you know, and the 14th centuries, it was quite common for people to believe that they could communicate with those who had already died. Is that still something that's believed, or?
Yeah, you're talking more like shamanistic, like actual communication. I know people. My neighbor yesterday said, "I hope your grandmas come visit you these days." You know, so we can communicate oftentimes through dreams, but I think maybe in another way that you might be referencing is a little deeper. That part, I'm sure, absolutely. I don't go into those depths. I just know I communicate through thought or through, you know, some people would call prayer. But yeah, I would say absolutely. Yeah. Anybody
I have
else?
another question. Are journals kept, you know, of their relatives, you know, as a means of passing down from one generation to another generation, you know, something which is written about their lives so that you can actually, you know, really look at it very closely and see just what they did, what they experienced, you know, all that, or not?
I wonder. I don't know. In my family, I know my great-grandma, they couldn't write, you know, so I think it's more oral tradition. It's passed on through stories. As soon as photographs came into place, there's pictures. But I think more of it is story. That's just from my own experience. I don't know if there's not other ones who maybe would have written something, but that I know of, for the most part, I would probably go oral tradition first. Yeah.
I'm just adding on to his question. Just our culture back then, they used to not. A lot of them couldn't afford school, and a lot of them were out in the fields, and so a lot of them don't know how to even write. And even now, they don't know how to write too.
Some.
That's tied to the indigenous culture of Mexico and the Americas, that there's a lot of just oral tradition for pretty much all cultures throughout North and South America.
Yeah. And I
Ties into that. And it continues now, even like with our family. I have pictures of her and my nieces all sitting in front of their nanita, you know, listening to her stories. So it's cute.
That's awesome. Yeah.
It's cute, but it's awesome, you know, it's
Yeah.
powerful for them and for me.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
I had those same sentiments though, because I asked the same questions. So when I was in college, I interviewed my grandpa and wanted to know his story, how he came to this country, and then I had tons of questions like, what were your parents like, and your grandparents and their grandparents, and what were their ideals? And so then I started documenting, and now I go and ask, like, I have tons of relatives, and I want to know everyone's history, and I try to write down as much as I can about that to leave for our children.
Yeah.
My husband's American, Caucasian, he was born, so anyway, so I started doing it with that side of the family too, like just all
the family tree.
of, like,
My grandma, the one that I grew up with, she lived to be almost 103. She passed away right before her 103rd birthday. And for her 100th birthday, they threw her a party and they made T-shirts. She was always wanting that. Who's related to me? Who are they? Who are their kids? And she liked to write it down, and she kept it. She was Christian. We were Catholic, but she was Christian. She'd keep it in her Bible. And for her 100th birthday, the T-shirt had her 8 living children, and then their children, and then their children's children. Everybody's names would be like to down here on the shirt.
Put on a t-shirt?
Yeah, I know. It was really tiny font. My mom's was like that big. My mom has 4 kids, 2 grandkids. She doesn't like that very much, but I'm like, sorry, Mom. But you know, it was the names. Who are they? How are we connected? Because obviously we're mixed, like, right? We're colonized by Spain. Obviously, that's up in my mix somehow. I'm the lightest one in our family, but still, I don't know. I don't go back to where the Spaniards came. Like, my grandmother was orphaned, and then she was raised so she knows how to write. 'Cause she was raised at a orphanage, and then the other ones, they didn't write. They were like farm. They didn't know how to write. Yeah. So.
Wasn't the Rise book Why We Tell Stories too?
The Truth About Stories.
Truth About Stories.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was beautiful.
Very powerful.
Yeah.
Another question,
Yes.
have you become so Americanized now that you no longer really feel the same kind of concern for your parents?
Oh,
So that you're not going to go and live with them and watch them, as they mature and get old and need to have more care?
Yeah.
I mean, is the concept of Chicanos actually caring for their people who
Yeah.
are still with them, something that's still so ingrained in them that they do, or do
Yeah.
they send them off to some care center?
no, if people are using the word Chicano, they are still very much tied, right? I'm still very much connected. I'm not saying all, I can't answer the question all for anybody, but no, that is a thing, absolutely. I'm the youngest daughter of, I'm the one in charge. I was able to, thank my goddesses, I was able to just buy myself a little home, and I got me a little room, and I got, a room for them, and so I let them know, like, they're in LA still, and they don't like the Sacramento heat, but I'm like, when you're ready, and you can come when it's mild temperatures, I want that, and I know that I want to share that responsibility with my siblings in LA. Am I going to move back to them? No, I'm not going back to LA, but hopefully they'll come up here, and we can kind of, they can live in both places.
Do that. Like, my mother cares for my maternal grandma. I was raised by my maternal grandma.
Yeah.
I was a child. And my father had a heart attack, and he lived with me now in a stroke, so I take care of him.
Yeah,
So
yeah, no,
part of
that's,
a big part of our culture.
yeah, it's a big part. We very much so. Yeah. But-
So I think it's clear that home is very deep, right? Family is the past and the future, and
Yeah, for me, and I can't say for everybody, but for me, home is where I found.
yeah. No, familiar, absolutely. So, go research, learn more, tell more stories, paint more, do more art, keep the traditions going. Mix up America with all this beauty of all the different cultures and all the art and the foods and the clothing and the dress and the decorations and the celebrations
Yeah.
of life and death.
And go vote. November 6th. Vote.
Very, very important. Thank you.
Thank
You are
you.
the best.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you all for sticking it out.
For coming.
Thanks.
And we
Yeah.
hope to see you at the end of the month for 3 days of a very powerful film
Cool.
called Human Flow. Couldn't be more appropriate.